Hey, I'm Isaac Schanno Johnson, and if you don't know me, I'm a musician, composer, producer, and I make videos about all that fun stuff, music composition, music production, so make sure you hit that subscribe button over here to see videos like this in the future. So, we're going to go through a Reason session breakdown. I use Reason as my DAW. Currently, I'm on Reason 9. I haven't upgraded yet, but I'll probably do that in the future sometime. But we're going to go through one of my songs, Movement 1, Expanding, from my album Expanding in Electric Symphony. Go check it out. It'll make this video make a whole lot more sense. Or just keep watching. I'll throw it into this video so that you can hear it. And I explain all the stuff that I did with the synths, how I created the synths, how I mixed them, and all that fun stuff. What different instruments you have, how I used them, the form of the song. So, yeah, hope you enjoy it. Alright, so here is the Reason session. Here's the Reason file. My idea when making this whole album, the concept was that it sounded like it was an electronic orchestra. So I wanted it to be the same instruments throughout the album. And for the most part it is. There are some that are added in the later few songs. But the main idea is that it stays to be the same instruments. So let's go through what those instruments are. Up at the top we have something called Vox right up here. And the reason I called it Vox is because I wanted it to sound like a voice. Pretty straightforward. But let's take a listen to it so we can hear what that is. Okay, so kind of sounds like a voice. The inspiration for me trying to make this synth and for naming it Vox was Porter Robinson's Goodbye to a World. He has that electronic synth voice in there with the lyrics. There's some name for it, but I don't remember what it is. That was the inspiration. I wanted to make something that kind of sounded like that, but my own version of it. So yeah, that's why I called it Vox. If you see all of this stuff underneath it is all automation data. So we close all of that. These are the notes. That's it. That's all it's playing. It's not really doing a whole lot, but it has all this automation stuff. Now, one thing is I wanted it to have mainly focusing on that idea, right? These 4 notes kind of. That's kind of the idea of the whole album right there. And then it has this second theme over here. And that's kind of the idea of like those 2 themes is basically all the musical material I used for the whole album. I tried to just take those and reimagine them in different ways and vary them and change them all up. So that's basically what that's doing. Now all of these, we'll have to check what these are, but these are all automation data. So here I wanted something turned off and something turned on. All right, you can see how it's all the way down at the bottom. So this is a button over here. Button 4, and then this is just all the way down. Some of this stuff, this I think is probably release. I'm guessing that's what this is because I wanted the long notes to be held out, but these I didn't want it to be held out a whole lot. Yeah, so that one's being held a lot more, and then it kind of dies down a little bit. And we hear it just by itself. This note is held out a lot. Slowly dies down, pulling the release back. Not much release here. Yeah, so that's release. Just simple stuff to add some, some interest. Make sure it's not super boring. This one I think is rotary 4 has got to be distortion because this has no distortion over here. This section, but half of this section this part right here has distortion, and then more distortion at the end, these last few notes. We'll take a look at what I did for that instrument, but let's go through the other instruments first. So this is Vox, delay on that Vox track, and then here we have bells. So this is another synth I made. I wanted it to be kind of like a bell sound, because the original idea for this synth was from a preset in Reason. When this track I originally made like in 2016, I think, while I was still at Berkeley, or 2015, the year before I graduated, and I used a whole bunch of presets after like I spent an internship working at a studio, and every time I took the train there, I'd listen to Porter Robinson's Worlds album. So then I stayed up till 4 a.m. making this track once, and then I redid it for this album. The whole idea basically is I wanted to make an album that's a symphony, so the different parts of each movement are their own songs. So rather than having movement 1 as its own 15-minute track, I wanted to have movement 1 separated into 3 different tracks, because first movement of symphonies is often sonata form, and that has 3 different sections to it. So here we have bells, little bell instrument. Sounds, I mean, pretty pretty straightforward. And this one, it's just cycling through the same type of chords, right? This is a D sus2 chord, and then a D major chord, and then we have this B minor add 11 chord, and then a A major chord with a 4th in first inversion, so it's C sharp D E A, and it cycles through those 2 separately here, or those 4 separately here, and then here they're all together. So we have D sus2, D major, B minor add 11, A add 11, I guess, in first inversion. I like the sound of that crunchy chord, of that half step here with the C sharp and D. It sounds nice to me. Again, all automation down here. Yeah, just to add some more interest, make it a little more interesting. Change it up so it's not the same synth the entire time. Okay, swells. My idea for this one is I wanted to sound like a pad, kind of like strings, and at the very beginning, at the very beginning of this song, it comes in with the main idea. This is the main theme of the whole piece of music right here. Let's take a listen to it without me talking here. That's it. That's the main idea, main theme, those little pieces. And I mean, when I was writing it, I wrote it all on a piece of paper, so it's all handwritten, and then I put it into Reason. And this little thing right here, that little theme, I tried to vary in all the different ways I possibly could. I played it in minor, in all the different modes, in whole tone, in diminished, or octatonic. Played it a bunch of different ways, and it comes back, right? It's these 4 notes, or this little theme is the same thing as this part that we went through at the beginning. It also comes back at the end in the voice part again. So let's look at chords. Here's the material that we got at the beginning. D sus2, D major. B minor add 11, A major add 11 in first inversion. We have them together. Let's see, what else we have? We have a bass part. That doesn't come in until later. It hits real heavy. I like it. And then we have a transition thing, which is basically a sweep, honestly. Not very complicated. That's it. A glitch box, that's what I call it. It's basically a drum loop. That's what this whole thing is, and edited so that it sounds less like acoustic drums and more like clicks and pops. And then underneath it we have two different sets of drums. So this one is the main one. It's kind of just like a standard dance drum beat, right? 4 on the floor. Right? And then this one above it, drum kit 2, is some added stuff on top of that. So if we listen to all 3 of those, glitch box plus all 2 drum kits, this is what we have. Just gives it some extra flavor. Changes it up a little bit so you have a little bit more variety of sounds than just bass drum and snare drum and all that. Yeah, let's take a look at how I made some of these instruments. I'll explain it. Hopefully this is useful to some people trying to get used to Reason. Some quick controls that I'm doing to switch between those: F5, F6, F7. F7 is this window, F5 is the mixer, and F6 is all of your instruments. So, okay, start from the top. Vox. So we have Maelstrom. Yeah, it's a female choir sample and a square wave. And that's basically it. That's the, beginning of the sound there. Control L is what I'm doing to loop that. And then you hit L. It'll loop that section. So if we go back here, solo it. See, we can see this release is going up, right? It's changing as I'm playing it, or as the song is playing. And then all we have on top of that is some pulverizer distortion. Some pulverizer distortion so that we could beef it up a little bit. Again, we have more distortion. This comes in at the end, I believe. This is probably linked to this. Yeah, distortion on, off. So that'll turn this off at the end. And then we have a whole bunch of small stuff. So EQ, just getting rid of some top end. Unison to make it sound a little bigger. Some delay and some reverb. And then an EQ. Yeah, this is back when I used the EQ in the combinator. So the way I did this was I used a combinator to combine all of these things rather than having them all on their own. It also lets me do all this modulation stuff up here, and then I can control it with I actually have a controller here, a MIDI controller with knobs and faders. And then we have EQ, getting rid of some low end. That's basically it, because I don't want it interfering with whatever bass notes. And then a compressor. That's basically all I got on it. It's not super complicated. It's just a number of different layers. That's how I try and make my sounds, is just layer a whole bunch of stuff. Let's go to the next instrument. Bells. All right, let's solo the bells. Okay. So this one we used Thor. Just another type of synth. I like Thor a lot because it lets you combine 3 different waveforms, and you can combine them right away rather than having to do like subtractor, and then if you want 4 or 3 waveforms on subtractor, you have to have another subtractor. Square wave, sine wave, and then a sample of a bell sound. So the reason I like... Actually, let's take a listen to just that bell sound. Let's see. Yeah. So what I did for this one was I changed the octave. So this bell sound, we'll take it to the original octave. We'll take it back. Down here, this blue one, right here. Real quiet. But yeah, so we have that in the middle. But what I did was this octave knob, pull it up so it's in the octave 7 rather than in the middle, which is octave 4. So C4 is C4, right? So it's 3 octaves up from the other stuff. These are just normally. I like having that sound because I wanted it to sound more bell-like, and I think one of the things that makes a bell sound like a bell is like higher, sparklier notes. The other ones are pretty simple. It's just like square wave and a sine wave to add some beef. I like doing that a lot with synths. Have whatever sounds you want and then put a sine wave underneath it, just so that you can get these flavors from, like, let's say a square wave and a bell sample, but you don't have the full sound just coming from those, and you get this really pure sound from a sine wave. I think it adds a lot of fullness to the sample. Okay, and then we have going through this filter, this other filter, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and we have some delay and chorus added on in Thor. Okay, what do we have after that? Well, we have some distortion. Really quiet, though, and I think it's maybe not on. Yeah, it's not on. A lot of this stuff, I made these instruments to be used for every single one, so I changed them. If there was one song where I needed this one sound, I'd change it in all of them because I wanted it to be this uniform sound. Then we have some delay. This is a unison again. I love this thing. In Reason, oof, it'll add... I mean, it'll make your samples sound a whole lot more full. Now, the way I set it is a little weird. I don't set it on the default settings because it depends how I want to use it. This one, bells, I wanted it to add some fullness, but not make it sound super, like, chorusy. I didn't want it to sound like there was some phasing. So that's why it's mostly the dry sound with a little bit. It's not detuning it a whole lot. And it's only doing it with... I think this is the number of voices it duplicates. It's only 8 rather than the 16. EQ, rolling off some low end, high end. I think this is a great thing to do with your mixing is you roll off the frequencies you don't need. So for example, with this, I don't need the higher end and the lower end of this sound. It's only really playing on the middle of the piano. And when it is playing high, it's not very high. So I can cut it out, right? I only want it to be playing these middle frequencies. It'll add a whole lot of, like, cleanliness, I guess, to your mix so that you can hear each instrument a little more clearer. Last thing is compressor. Gotta have a compressor on all of them, especially considering this is such a big dynamic range in the whole song. All right, next sample or sound, not sample. I don't have any samples. I don't have a whole lot of samples for this. Okay, swells, yeah. So I want it to sound like strings. That's why you see right up here. Again, another combinator, all this stuff up here to control. And so if you hit tab, it'll take you to the back, and then hit K, it'll clean up some of the wires. I actually really like the modularness of Reasons. One of the reasons why I use it a lot is you can route everything exactly the way you want to, and it's visually very straightforward. The routing in something like Pro Tools is straightforward, but not visually as straightforward. This like straight up looks like a rack, and it looks kind of like a modular synth would. So I really like that about it, that you can just change it up however you want. Okay, so here I have 2 subtractors. I wanted to, maybe one of them is detuned, I'm guessing. That's normally how I do it, is I detune one of them a little bit. It'll add a lot to your sounds. So subtractor, triangle wave, sine wave again. Love the sine waves. That's why it sounds sort of 8-bit, is it's all simple waveforms originally. And then we have some distortion that kicks in. I don't think in this one, but I think in one of the other tracks it does. So if you don't know how to use these knobs here, hit Show Programmer. That'll give you all of this stuff. On the left-hand side, what I'm doing is this is all of the different pieces of this subtractor, and you can route whatever you want, right? If I wanted to route this master fader of the line mixer to rotary 4 over here, and then master level, rotary 4 now controls that. So you see that master fader now gets controlled by this thing. So I'll undo that because I don't want that in here. Yeah, and we have some more distortion. I like the scream distortion a lot. I tend to use it a couple different times. This one I didn't. And then we have some chorus, unison again. This one's at 16 voices because I want it to be even fuller. It looks like it's probably the same amount, maybe detuned a little bit, tiny bit more than the other one, yeah. Rolling off the low end, high end because I don't need it, and a compressor, right? Not a whole lot. Not the most complicated synths in this song. Okay, next one, we got the bass. Actually, wait, let's listen to those swells. So one thing I noticed that I did was panned. That's why I have this here. One is panned hard left, one is panned hard right, and slightly detuned, right? This cent is up 3, so it's not perfectly in tune. This one's -2. This one's -3, and I don't know why I detuned them that way. If they're perfectly in tune, it sounds okay, but it can sound a little flat. Yeah. Just a tiny, tiny detail. Yeah, just a tiny detail to make it a little more interesting, because if everything is perfectly in tune, it kind of sounds robotic, and it kind of doesn't sound super natural. Not that I want this to sound natural, but I want it to sound like it's being played by some type of humanoid computer, I guess. And that's one way to do it, is detune stuff, because no instrument is perfectly in tune except for an electric piano or any electronic instrument, right? The best violin player in the world isn't going to be hitting A = 440 every single time they hit A. And you don't want them to, because if they did, it wouldn't sound like a violin player. It would sound like an auto-tuned electronic violin. So if you detune your stuff a tiny bit, it'll add a little interest. Now I do want to explain the way I detune it. I don't just detune it randomly or just all sharp. If I detuned it all to be exactly the same sharpness, it'll sound slightly out of tune. Right? There we go. We don't want it to be just purely sharp, and we don't want it to be by much. But if you detune it slightly in both directions evenly, then you have this nice fuller sound. So this one's tuned 3 cents sharp. This one's tuned 3 cents flat. This one's 2 cents sharp. This one's 2 cents flat. And what that does is it kind of cancels each other out, right? If you have 4 singers, 2 are singing slightly sharp, 2 are singing slightly flat, you'll hear generally that center note that they're trying to hit in the middle. And you can do this with your own synths, because it'll do exactly that. All right, let's move on. Next sound, we got bass. Yeah. Okay, so here we have Thor again. I love this synth. And this one, we have 3 sounds, a sawtooth wave, square wave, and then a sine wave really low. So if we look at this right here, octave 3, so it's 1 octave lower. That's what I think gives music a lot of this heavy punch in the bass, is you have this doubled sine wave. Some people might use a sample for it. I like to create it myself because then you could really customize what that sound is. That's why it sounds so punchy and so heavy, is you have this double octave. So even if the bass is actually playing these low notes, right, C, E1 here, there is also a note that's an octave lower, right? There's a note that's here as well. But if we play that one on the sound, it's going to sound like garbage, right? What I just did there was F8 opens up this tool window, and you can quantize stuff, change the pitch, change the velocity. Super useful. All right, let's go back. Okay, so we're back here at the bass sound. Again, scream distortion. Love it. Put it on everything. And this one doesn't have a whole lot of distortion. Some of the others, some other distortion. This one on the bells is slightly lower. EQ for this one is right here, this dip at the end. Let's see, where is it? This one, blinking one, is there so that I can cut out where the bass drum hit is. Now, you don't need to do this if you have sidechain compression, which we'll get into in a minute. You don't need to do this, but the reason that I do this is just to give some more space for that kick drum to really punch. Especially in the bass, it matters a little more because you don't want them overlapping. I think one of the main things of having a clean mix in your songs and having a clean sound is this idea of making space, right? Let's say you have a piano and a guitar, they're playing the exact same thing and their audio files are playing the exact same frequencies. They're gonna kind of get mixed up together, and if you want them to sound super clean, then you got to make space for them. So maybe that all that means is you move the piano up a fifth, and the piano and the guitar stays in one place or whatever, and then you edit out some high end on one and some low end on the other. But you're making space to have these two instruments play together, and I think that's what makes it a really clean sounding mix. Now, this one up here, this. So I'm rolling off some of the high end with this, right? This little bump, I think I wanted it just to have some more rasp, some more like aggressive sound in the bass, so it doesn't just sound completely rolled off and warm. Let's take a listen to it. Yeah, it gives it a more gravelly sound. That's why I put that in. That makes sense. And some compression. Next sound, and then we'll get into some other stuff. Glitch box. No, this is the transition thing, huh? Okay, this one's pretty simple. It's just a sweep. It's not very complicated. It's basically noise, sweep. These are all being combined into here, and then this is sent to a compressor. So it has this really slow sine wave that's sweeping up, which you can't hear in this song, but that's what it is. It's just a sweep. Pretty simple. I have the attack and release routed up here. Same with the pitch with this button. Yeah, we could see that turns it on down here at 3. Because sometimes I wanted the pitch, sometimes I didn't. And then the attack and release, sometimes I wanted it to extend, so it'd go shh. Sometimes I just wanted it to go shh. Less release, so it didn't hang in there or hang on as long. All right, next one, the glitch box. Okay, this one gets to be pretty complicated, so this one's pretty crazy. I remember I had to watch a video on YouTube about how to make this. So, basic idea. This is our loop. So I hit this copy loop to track button, this button right here in the center. That button, that'll copy it here. So I have this as MIDI data. And then it plays through this thing right here, this loop. Okay, so it's constantly just running through those samples. And then I have each of these samples changing a little bit. So here I've changed the pitch so they're not just the same standard pitch as the original sample. Panning isn't changed, level isn't changed, decay isn't changed. Some of them are reversed. If you hit this slice edit mode button, you can get to this view. Some of them frequency is changed, and some of them the output is changed. So it gets complicated. Let's go through the outputs, because frequency, it just makes them higher pitched. Same with pitch, or filter frequency, sorry. So it filters out some stuff. Okay, outputs. So we flip over, hit tab. Here are all of our outputs up here. And what I've done is they're all going to different effects. So they're grouped in twos, so it's output. Main out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's a weird naming system. I would just name it if I made this. Reason, propeller head people, Reason Studios, call me. I would have just named it 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, rather than main out, 1, 2, 3, whatever. If it's all the way down, like this first sample down here, this will go main out, so it'll just go straight in. Next one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's this output. These go to two different things. So they're going to this delay and then this delay. So I have two different delays. I actually have 4 here. And one of them is going to a Kong sampler, drum sampler, and the reason it goes there is because you have this tape echo. So again, a different type of delay being added on to that output. Next one, this is output 3, 4. This one has a ring modulator. It basically like scoops the sound in a weird way. It glitches them up. It kind of makes them into a click. That's basically all that one does. Then we have some distortion being added for the 7/8 output 7/8, and then this distortion goes to a phaser, which then goes to a unison, which goes back into this mixer. I know this is a whole ton of stuff, right? But that's kind of what I wanted. I kind of wanted it to have all this varied sound, and it's like these tiny details, right? Having 4 different delays plus another one plus this ring modulator plus this distortion thing. That's why when you listen to all of those like glitchy things, why it has all these different sounds, right? This is just with some filter. That's how it sounds that way, right? Delay, or tape echo, ring modulator. One of the delays. Different delay. And the unison with distortion. And then combined, so it has this combined sound. All these different delays are set differently. Pause the video and take a look at them if you really want to. Most of them are the original sound, right? The dry wet thing is mostly to the left, so it's mostly the dry sound with a tiny bit of feedback. 8, 12, 20, 32, right? You have these tiny bits of feedback from the delay, so it's not much and it dies out pretty quickly, but they're all set differently, right? Next thing is the drums. Again, not super complicated, just different samples. I tried to find glitchy sounds in Reason's sample bank. That's all these are. They're from stock sound, as I just combined them all together in their own thing. And then this one has some distortion on it. Again, scream distortion. I love it. But it adds some interest to that sound. It makes it a little less, right? Tiny bit of distortion. Makes it my own a little bit more than just having it as the stock sound. And then some compressors, great. Last one, drum kit. So another drums, right? So this is just an 808 from a sample pack of 808s. That's a Reason sound. I'm pretty sure this is a Reason sound as well, yeah. And another Reason sound. Again, going into this mixer thing, the reason I have this one's set up a little funky because I want it to be side chaining all of them. I set up my side chains differently now, but let's get into sidechain compression, how I do it. So in this one, you could do it differently. I use a sidechain bus now because it's just less less setup, and it's easier to integrate new synths into it. So I kind of just use a template that I've made now. But this one, I have it this going this what's it called? This is red rum, and then output 1, which is this sound. The kick goes to Spider Audio splitter, so then it goes right back into this mixer, which then has the output from the red rum. So I'm sort of taking it, removing it, and then bringing it back, and then this output of this mixer here has all of these sounds, including this one that I just duplicated and removed. These, the reason I have so many is they go to all the instruments. They go to this, in Reason there's this key here for dynamics sidechain input. That's where they go, right? So this one goes back to the original, this one goes to another merger splitter, this one goes to the Vox track, swells track, this one goes to bells, bass, and then transition. Okay, pretty straightforward. And then it goes to this distortion. So I have distortion on my drums because let's see, how does it sound with distortion? Yeah, adds a little bit. I don't think I have it in this song, honestly, but I have it there because I think I do add it in some of the later songs. And then a compressor at the bottom. Pretty simple, not a whole lot. Not the most complicated synths that I've made, honestly. I've definitely made more complicated synths since this album, but that's basically how I've created all of these sounds. All right, let's do that again. Let's take a listen to it. Turn that loop off so that we don't hear that stuff. We got this stuff down here. Okay, so that's the song. That's basically it. There's a small tempo change in the middle here. That's why it sounds like it's speeding up and why this part sounds faster, because it is. Yeah, that's basically it. The form of it is this little intro stuff here. And this is basically our exposition of our sonata form in the first movement of this whole symphony thing that we're making. So theme 1, theme 2, and then over here is theme 1 again. That's normally how you have expositions, are often ABA, theme 1, theme 2, theme 1 again. So yeah, it's basically it. Not a whole lot of fancy stuff. I mean, some fancy stuff, but not the most amount of fancy stuff I've ever put in a song. And here we just have a cutoff of everything, right? Like there's this big, you hear everything and everything cuts out. Right? I did dovetail this a little bit, so you have this, or it cuts off right when this other sound comes in, so that then there's nothing here. It's literally just that sound, which is what I wanted. I wanted it to be everything's full, cuts out, and then you have that main theme again. That's basically all we got in this song. I'll make other videos of all my other songs so that people can see how I put together the music and how I organize it. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. Hope you learned something about music and music synthesis, music production. If you did, let me know in the comments. Put what you found most useful about it, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. As always, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.